So how about we start and introduce our panelists first? If you just want to go around, just like I did, and say a quick one sentence about who you are and what you're doing. So Zohair, why don't we start with you?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Alhamdulillah, from Canada, came here for medical school. Now I'm second year out of medical school, working in Brisbane. Alhamdulillah, no stranger to the Mackay community. I spent 6 months there during my internship, and just looking through the participant list here, alhamdulillah, a lot of familiar names, and also the Sierra class that we did as well on Zoom as well. So yeah.
Fahim, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hey, assalamu alaikum everyone. Fahim Kandaka. I'm a partner at a firm called BDO, which is an accounting firm, but I haven't done any accounting work in about 9 years. So I now do management consulting. And I also I went to Mackay, was in Whitsunday Anglican School as well for about 2 years, back in 2003-4. So I'm giving away my age here. Yeah, and then moved to Brisbane from Mackay for university, and we kind of ended up staying here pretty much. So I was just saying to Hamza, the last time I spoke to him, he was like 3 years old. So it's come a long way.
Mohammed, do you want to go next?
Thanks, Hamza. So I'm Mohammed. I'm Hamza's classmate. So as well, just finishing up my medical studies this year, and going to be living and working in Canberra next year. I've spent, I think, 10 years or so in Mackay. And I do miss it. It's a good town.
A lot of local people. And our last panelist today is Dina. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Assalamu alaikum. I'm a bit younger than the rest. I'm just out of high school and first year studying medicine at Griffith University. So now I'm down at the Gold Coast. If you're down there, just hit me up, you know.
Awesome. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us. So throughout the presentation, if you've got any questions, you can text them through into the Zoom chat. You can do it publicly if you're happy with people to see them, or if not, then you can just private message them to me as well, and I can read them out. But while we're waiting for everyone to get their brains warmed up, I'll start us off. So Dina, you're the one, you said you just finished high school, so I think you've probably got the most recent experience with high school. So I think our first kind of section, let's talk about leadership, because that's really a big part of going through high school. You've got your studies, which we'll talk about as well, but especially as a Muslim, I think leadership is something that is quite important to us. So why don't you just start off with, what does leadership mean to you? Nice and broad question.
Yeah, definitely, especially being Muslims in a Western community like Mackay. It was really important, and I think even at university this applies, that you as Muslims, you're basically representing your religion to the people who don't know much about it, and whatever they don't know, they learn from you and your actions. So by taking, I guess, being a leader in your community, not only are you representing yourself, you're representing the rest of the youth around you, the rest of the Muslim community. And for me, that's something really important, because, you know, as Muslims, a whole of what we try to do is da'wah. And by putting yourself out there, by putting your values, your beliefs, it's an opportunity for you really to do da'wah and just inform the people around you what it means to be a Muslim and a Muslim leader in our society.
MashaAllah, thank you for that. Does anyone of our other panelists want to chime in here? Chime in before I pick on you.
Sorry,
I'm friends with all of you, even though some of you I haven't talked to in a long time, so I'm not afraid of...
I'll go first. Yeah, from a leadership perspective, I think that's right, Dina, in that quite often being a Muslim person who's prominent, if you're part of a minority group, which we are in Australia, you unfortunately carry the burden of almost representing the whole group. That's fortunate and unfortunate. And I think, I don't know about you guys, but I kind of felt that that's a fair bit of pressure to carry on your shoulders as well. So I guess my advice would be, while that's good, don't let that overwhelm you. Like, just be a good person yourself, and let that bit take care of itself if the pressure is becoming overwhelming. The flip side of that is, if that's something that motivates you, and I think Dina gave a perfect example of, if the intention is of dawah and you want to turn it into a form of ibadah, and that inspires you, great, and you should go ahead and do it. But if there's anyone on this call right now who genuinely feels like that's quite a burden to carry, you're not alone. Okay, I'm just pointing that out there. That is a burden to carry. But in terms of leadership, obviously, so I'm a partner firm with, I don't know, 600 staff at the moment, and I started as a graduate, and basically we had to work my way up, right? And at every step, when they decide whether to promote you or not, once you get to about manager level, about halfway, they're deciding whether you're a good enough leader. That's basically the judgment call. It's not capabilities anymore. It's about whether you're a good enough leader. And once you get further and further along, you just realize it's a never-ending journey to learn. And it's not even like, there's so many definitions of leadership and things like that. But where we've kind of landed, that's worked for me, at least personally, and this is going to be a very personal thing, is just being able to have a positive impact in everything you do. Now, whether that's a one-on-one interaction or a 1 to 500 interaction, that's pretty much it. Like, just being the person who doesn't panic when everyone else is feeling down, or if someone looks sad, going up to them and saying, hey, how are you feeling? Distracting them from that sadness, or at least being there to listen. Like, there's so many forms of leadership, and every single one of us in every single moment can choose to lead in that moment. I've now got to the point where I've actually got an executive coach to teach me stuff, and she's writing a book, and she talks about leadership of the heart and leadership of the mind, heart and head, sorry. So there's all the to read and all the mechanics of all of it, but in the end, it just comes down to compassion and empathy and sincerity and all of those things that, as Muslims, we have such a competitive advantage on, because we get taught that from day dot, right? So it's just in our values. It's espoused in us from our parents, teach us that from day one, alhamdulillah. So yeah, so I guess my main message to you is, one, you're all a leader in every moment if you choose to be. And two, if it does in certain moments feel a bit overwhelming, please just feel free. Don't feel guilty to take a step back and just look after yourself and be a good person. That's okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with that.
Thanks, Fahim. You mentioned a lot of things there that hopefully we can unpack a bit more in the 2 hours or so that we've got. But there's one thing that I wanted to start off with. You mentioned intention, and if you've got the right intention, and Dina as well talked about da'wah. So this is a question that was sent in by someone who couldn't make it today, but they really wanted to ask it. And I think it's really important to start off with. I'll direct this one to Zahir first, if that's all right. Zahir, should we even be trying to get leadership positions as a Muslim? I thought Islam doesn't encourage us to go after this life. You're supposed to think about deen over dunya. So how do we, reconcile both of those? How can you try and go for leadership positions at school or university in keeping with Islam?
That's a very good question. First, I just want to say as well that what Fahim mentioned was very interesting insight, and mashallah, because that was mentioned, I think, by an executive coach who's probably really high in the field, and she's boiled down leadership down to those values. That when you said that, in my head, I was like, oh, wow. And when you said about the competitive advantage, because we've been kind of drilled in that, that's quite fascinating and empowering to think that as well, that Muslims are almost being groomed in this society, like you said, that competitive advantage. But there's so many other things as well beyond that, in terms of, like, we don't drink, we're not involved with a lot of things that is a big time dump for a lot of other people. And so there is that competitive advantage that we have. So I just thought that was a very interesting point. I just wanted to highlight that. Jazakallah khair. That's for the question. So the way I want to split this up is, because the question is being asked from an akhirah point of view. It's being asked, as a Muslim, relationship with Allah and these sorts of things. In that journey towards Allah, where does leadership fit in? And how do you square that with the idea that aren't you going after the dunya if you are aspiring for leadership positions in high school or beyond after that as well, to be in a position of influence, in a position of power, to hold positions in communities so it looks good on your resume, you get clout, social clout, or perhaps a monetary gain as well. So the first question is whether or not there is a contradiction. And in order to figure that out, we need to see, does Islam encourage leadership? That's the first question. And if it does, then obviously then we need to understand how it is in that case different than chasing after the dunya. So the answer to the first question is that yes, there is a type of leadership that Islam encourages going after, and there's a type of leadership that Islam discourages from going after. So I'll mention the discouraging first. There's a hadith from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam where he said, do not give leadership to those who seek after it. Do not give leadership to those who seek after it. Now this narration, when you look at it, actually it's not being, the concept of leadership is not being seen as a negative thing. Rather, it's the intention of the person. Don't give leadership to the one who seeks it. So this is not a knock on leadership. This is about the intention of the person. And this is what Fahim was mentioning about sincerity and compassion and whatnot, right? What's the quality of the person? Now, the second thing about leadership that I want to mention is a universal leadership. And Fahim also mentioned this point, where the Prophet ﷺ said, "Kullukum ra'in." All of you are shepherds. And the concept of shepherd here is a metaphor for leadership. Everyone is responsible for a flock. That's what a shepherd is, right? وَكُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَاعِيَتِهِ. And all of you will be asked regarding their flock. So this is the second point, which is the idea that no matter where you are in the world, what position you're in, you're always going to be in a position of leadership. So the question of, is leadership haram or these sorts of things? I mean, it is a reality of human life. Everyone will have to be in some sort of role where they'll have to make decisions for themselves and for others. And in the most granular system, it's something like in a family with a mother and a father for the children. But even within the children, the oldest of the siblings, they are, having a bit of, there's always something that separates that. There are people kind of that are influenced by what you have to do. The third thing I want to mention is the type of leadership that is particularly encouraged in Islam. And this is the leadership that's mentioned in the end of Surah Furqan, the 25th Surah of the Quran. Beautiful dua. Many of us know this dua. رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ وَاجْعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. So this is the famous dua. Oh, our Lord, make from our wives, our children, our spouses, and our children, our descendants, the coolness of our eyes. قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ. And people know about this part. But what's the second part? وَاجْعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. And make us, now this is a dua, make us for the muttaqeen, for the people of taqwa, for the people of righteousness, God-fearing, consciousness, etc., etc. Make us an imam for them. Now, imam here really means imam of the right. What does it mean to be imam of the muttaqeen? It means to be an example for people to follow. An example in terms of how you live a life that the muttaqeen and those who will follow will look to this person or look to you as an example of how they should live their life. So this is not about leadership in the sense of I'm in charge of an organization or anything like this. This is about an individual who has transformed himself in a way. And again, it links to what Fahim was saying very beautifully about the idea of sometimes just take a step back and focus on yourself, be a good person. That's actually the type of quote unquote leadership, because that's a form of leadership as well. That's not shying away from leadership. In fact, that is going from, you can say, a more tainted, dunyawi, difficult type of leadership to a more pure form of leadership, which is manifesting a lifestyle in the world that other people will be inspired by and other people will do. And that's about you just living your life as best as you can, following the guidance of Islam and being an inspiration to others. So that's Imam of the Muttaqeen. Excuse me. So these are the three things. So you have a type of leadership that's discouraged to go for, and that's obviously the leadership that is pertaining to the dunya, pertaining to the world and these sorts of things. It's discouraged to actively
seek out for it and always want to be on top, always want to be lead just for the sake of it. And then there's the leadership that is actually encouraged, which is being a good person in yourself, being a role model for others. You're not in charge of anybody. You are focusing on yourself. Now, you seek out after that type of leadership because that's the dua we make. Now, another narration or another tidbit I want to put into this, which is the ayah in Surah Yusuf, where Yusuf alayhi salam says to the Malik, to the king, make me a treasurer in the world. So this is now Yusuf, a prophet of Allah, who is actually seeking leadership here. Seeking leadership. And is this leadership of the akhirah? Is this some masjid or something? No, this is literally the ancient Egypt, one of the greatest civilizations in the world. And he's saying, make me the treasurer there. Is this, and it's about money. This is not even like something about, oh, make me in charge of, religious services, right? So how do we understand this in light of that hadith? The way we understand it is that it goes back to your intention. Yusuf alayhi salam recognized in that particular situation, he had abilities, and it's in a humble way. And it's not arrogant to recognize what Allah has blessed you of ability and qualities and what you're able to do. And he recognized that he was given the gift of, number one, being able to interpret dreams, which would be imagine if you speak to any economic analyst or someone who's trying to make money on share trading and whatnot. Imagine if they had an ability to be able to see what's going to happen in the future, or what type of how much of advantage are they going to have, right? And so this is what Yusuf alayhi salam had. And also he was a very trustworthy person, and he was quite competent as well and intelligent as well. So that makes all for a great person to manage the treasury of the state. So he recognized that. And so he went out after that for that reason, for the sake of service for the people there, because there was a famine at that time, and they were trying to manage the funds in a way, manage the public treasury in a way to get past the famine. So similarly, when it comes to our life, it goes back to intention. If your intention is the glory, is the recognition, is the fame, is the, oh, everyone will be so proud of me, right? That sort of thing. Or my parents will be proud of me. We're past the age now when we get to high school where that should be the main thing about, oh, I want people to be proud of me, right? Obviously, you listen to your parents. That's a different point, right? You're obviously going to listen to your parents. But as a prime motivating factor, it shouldn't be about what other people are going to be thinking about you. It's the type that's discouraged. But if you're in a situation, and this goes back to what Dina was saying, which is the idea of, well, we are now a minority community in a non-Muslim land. And so if we attain these positions of influence, then it will help us to be able to mobilize things that will be more in line with our values, mobilize things that will be able to help other Muslims, with all the different troubles and difficulties that are being faced with young Muslims, in schools and these sorts of things, Islamophobia and whatnot. And they'd be able to advance the interests of the ummah as well in high school and beyond. If that's your intention, then that is the type of leadership that is praiseworthy to actually seek out, because you've recognized I can do something good for the ummah in that particular state, if that's the intention. So in a nutshell, to bring everything together, the point of leadership and these types of dunyawi leaderships is that we have to keep the ummah in mind. That should be the reason. It's about how am I going to advance. It should not be about my personal gain and these sorts of things and whatnot. Rizq is another thing, and we can go into that. Now, obviously making money and stuff for your families and elevating your position within a company so that you're getting more money and whatnot, that's a very positive thing, because good money in a righteous man is a very good thing, as the Prophet ﷺ said to Amr ibn al-As when he gave him the money. And he said, Amr ibn al-As said, oh, Ya Rasulullah, I didn't convert for this, because he just converted. And the Prophet started giving him money. And he's thinking, oh, are you thinking that I just converted because I wanted some money? And the Prophet ﷺ said, Ni'mal mal fi ni'mal rajul. The best of wealth is that which is in the hands of a good person. So anyways, that's a separate point. But yeah, that's what I would say with that.
Thank you, Jazakallah. I think that's very relevant, not just for us in high school, but we've got Fahim here who's moved quite high up many years out of high school, and in myself as well, climbing the ladder in the medical profession. So that's very relevant to all of us. So thank you for, putting some context around what we're talking about with leadership. Maybe I'll open the floor now. So do any of our students here or parents or anyone want to ask any questions, you can unmute yourself now and ask that way, or text it through in the chat.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
How do you become a better leader in like an Islamic way?
Who wants to take that one up?
تفضل محمد Khan.
No, I think I can give it a go. Thanks as well for the question. I think Fahim's better suited having a 600 personnel company that he's managing, mashallah. Your question was, how can someone become a better leader economically? I think what was reflected a lot tonight was just making sure you're sticking to the stuff you've been growing up with. And that's all of the Islamic values that have been put into you. Not losing those in those key moments as a leader where, you have to try be fair with people. You have to make a decision that's tough. How you organize your time, how you treat the people as a leader. All those things actually just come back to being Islamically what you think is the right decision. What decision you think is going to bring you closer to Allah, what decision you think is going to be pleasing for Allah. Those are the broad brush strokes, I would say. The specifics I'll leave to the actual leaders in the group here. If anyone else in the panel has anything.
Thank you for that. Fahim, what do you think?
We've got the best example, don't we? The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I'm actually going to paste the link into the chat for you all. There was a book that not a friend, but someone I was, alhamdulillah, I had the pleasure of meeting. He's very young. He was like 33, 34, and he passed away only 2 years ago. So he was passed away under the age of 40. He was seen as one of the most talented Muslims that we have in the Western world from a skills and capabilities perspective. But he pretty much dedicated his life at some point to just reading through the seerah, and he's basically done the more Western qualifications and linking the Western books of leadership to the seerah, and he came up with 11 qualities and attributes of the Prophet Muhammad that any non-Muslim could pick up the book and copy. And that's for me, it was a really nice book to read. And the person that I'm talking about, may Allah grant him Jannah, inshallah, he was such an inspirational person, and he did everything that Zuhair was talking about. I mean, we can't obviously go into his mind about his intention, but looking at his behavior and the way he was talking, it was very much about the ummah and how to raise the standing of the ummah in various different environments. And he made a book that wasn't your traditional religious book, but it was very relatable to copy the pathway to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But yeah, I think for me, that's probably it's the basics, right? So just go back to read as much as you can about difficult decisions that the Prophet had to make. Read at how he led in certain situations. There's so much written about that. That's probably would be my suggestion.
Okay, thank you for that. We've got a question from Simon here in the chat. As a leader, how do we prevent oppression without being a jerk? So I think, of the qualities that we're talking about, and if we're looking at the example of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, preventing oppression would definitely be up there. And there's preventing oppression large scale, and then there's preventing oppression in your daily life. You've got someone who, at school, bullying is still an issue, and whether it's outright bullying or whether it's someone's being excluded from the group, or they're being picked last on the sports team every lunchtime, that's a little bit of oppression. And as leaders, and as Muslims, naturally, we might want to stand up to that, but you also don't want to rub people the wrong way. You also don't want to come across as a jerk. So Fahim, you were talking, I'll let you continue that. How do we stand up to people without rubbing people up the wrong way? And should we be caring so much about what other people think, as long as we're doing the right thing?
A couple of things. Obviously, there's the hadith around, if you can stop it physically, stop it with your tongue, and then think about it from your heart. There's a really good government campaign. You'll see a pattern in me. I don't like reinventing the wheel. So if someone else has a good idea, I just love jumping onto the good idea. There's a really good federal government campaign going on right now called Unmute Yourself. which is basically encouraging you to unmute and talk and stand up when you see something wrong. It's lots of taxpayers' dollars, so all of our dollars have been spent on it. It's our investment. It's all of us. I would encourage you to look at that, and there's nothing wrong with stealing some ideas from there. It's probably just safety is probably what I would encourage from a practical sense. Just be mindful. You don't want to escalate the situation, so make sure if you are going to speak out, it's safe to do so. Obviously, if someone other than you is being oppressed and they are not safe, do something to whatever you can without escalating the situation. Do something to support them. I've seen a 4-panel cartoon once, and one of the best ways to do it is to just sit next to the person being abused and just ignore the person abusing and just talk to them, and then start kind of walking away, sort of thing, and like de-escalate the situation in that moment. There are other ways and other means that are more effective to deal with that situation in terms of reporting to authorities and following processes about the individual person. I wouldn't encourage you to take the bully on physically in that moment while they're angry, because I think these things can escalate quite quickly. But if we take it up to a slightly more broader level, though, away from the example of just bullying, we just got to be a bit careful. There's ignorance and there's hatred. So sometimes people just don't know, right? So they say things that are somewhat offensive, or not somewhat, clearly offensive. And I don't want to make excuses for them either, because in this day and age, there should be a lot of elements of doing some research and not saying things that are that ignorant and offensive. But then there are also people that are genuinely hateful. I don't know about you, but I like to take the view that everyone is ignorant, not hateful, and I just give them the benefit of the doubt, right? So try spin that. Someone needs to be rigid. Try spin it into a slightly positive thing. I remember once, my wife wanted to run a program at a shopping mall here in Brisbane for Ramadan, and we wanted to do like workshops for kids in Ramadan. And she just walked up. We saw a Chinese New Year one, and we saw a Diwali one. So I was like, oh, let me just walk up and see if they'll do a Ramadan one. And we thought they'd say no. And anyway, they were like, wow, yeah, let's do it. What's involved? And blah, blah, blah. And then the lady was like, wow, I didn't realize Muslims buy their milk from here. I'm like, where else do we buy milk from? Like, okay, of course we buy milk from here. So the level of ignorance, and there's so much, when you Google Muslims and Islam and you see Muslims on TV, there's not a lot of positive news about us, right? So there's a lot of people who don't know, we know very little about us. So sometimes you will see statements that are very easy to think and fall into the trap of thinking that these people hate us, right? And it's very easy to then take the negative mindset of go, I'm not going to engage with them and I'm not going to do anything about it. So this is another form of leadership probably, where you could turn that into a positive and see it as an opportunity to build a friendship, to build a relationship. And that lady who said, do you not buy milk here? She basically now made that program into a national program. So it's now run across like, I think 17 Westfield shopping centers across the country and things like that. But she started with, wow, I didn't even realize you guys buy milk here. So there's lots of opportunities to don't fall into the trap of sometimes, and I'm not saying this is the case every time, but in a lot of cases, just an ignorant remark doesn't mean, don't cancel that person, like don't completely disengage with that person would be my suggestion as well.
Very wise words. So we've talked about a couple of different qualities, but I'll just say something that, maybe some students in the audience are thinking of. I definitely had that thought when I was growing up in high school. I'll direct this one to Mohammed because we've known each other for over a decade now. Knew each other growing up in school. So all the qualities that we've talked about, standing up, doing the right thing, honesty, trustworthy, whatever it may be, insert generic quality here. Sometimes it feels like what you really need to be a leader is just to be popular, or be cool, or to have people like you. So I know that, growing up in school, mashallah, you were always one of the kids who very well liked, very well respected by everyone. And that reflected itself in the leadership positions that you got. So how did you do it? How did you manage to be a Muslim? And like we said, we stand out like a sore thumb sometimes. You have to, leave lunch early to go and pray and find a room somewhere. How did you manage to be a Muslim and be cool and popular and likable, but also stay true to your values at the same time?
Jazakallah khair, as well, but as well reflected back onto you because you were school captain as well. So, it wasn't just me. But look, this is a very like hard question. And the reason why I'm still asking it today is because no one has this absolute clear guide on what you need to do. Like personal, like things that what me just thinking about, what like are some of the things to go through is, number one, you yourself, some quality, like some decisions, some thoughts, and like some things you need to sort out internally, and then externally, some things you can do, and just some things to like be aware of. So, internally, it's important to work out where you stand with Islam first and foremost, because being popular is only going to last as long as you can keep up whatever facade or like whatever image you want to place in front of your school friends. And then when you come home, you have a different image in front of your parents. And then, there might be a time where they mix and then there's like an identity crisis there. So it's important to get that bit straight up first. Do you just want to be popular? Like, is this your main goal in life? Just to have, just be the center of the party, always be having a good laugh with friends, always being at like every single, event or whatever. And it's important to ask yourself, what is your relationship with your deen? What is your relationship with Allah? How much do you value being popular? And externally is going to be, the people you hang out with, the activities that you get up to. And those are both like the co-curriculars you have in school, and then outside of that, just what kind of hobbies you're into and whatnot. And then the goals you have short and long term. And I found that once you start thinking about all those things and you become more sure of those answers, you're more sure of yourself as a person. You're more filled out as a person. And as a result, you become a lot more interesting. And then people will gravitate towards that stability. They'll go, oh yeah, this the computer guy. And even if you are just, this computer guy, they'll respect you for that. And they'll value the personal integrity you have, and as well your value in that. Other than that, look, this is a very, very like, being popular. I wouldn't say like I've got it like down pat. Like this is the the 5-step keys to do it. Otherwise, I would have written a book about it and had my millions. But mainly, the main thing it'll come is if you yourself are confident within yourself about how stable you are. You're not. And once you're stable, then you can work on external stuff that you want to achieve. Your goals, long term and short term, and the people you want to hang out with are these quality people. And then from that, what activities you get up to. Then you've built yourself as a person, and that's something that people will look for. There's a saying. It's like a hockey saying from like a famous hockey person, and I'm butchering it at the moment. But basically, the saying is, don't look for where the puck or like the ball, in another sport is currently. Look for where it's going to go. And that's why that hockey legend was so good, because he was always that one step ahead and able to catch up, or able to like see and predict it. And so I think with trying to be popular and having that like stress about it, you kind of lose, you kind of get trapped in what everyone else is doing and trying to be popular. Once you've stabilized yourself and you've worked out yourself and you're working on yourself, then you are that puck that everyone is looking towards. And then that's when you become that popular, and that's when you reach that stage. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
MashaAllah, thank you for that. So it doesn't seem like there's a clear-cut answer, but you've given us a pretty good guide. Zahir, did you have anything to comment about this, about being popular and being a leader?
MashaAllah, no, I just enjoyed listening to Fahim and Muhammad. Those are very beautiful points, nothing to add.
Absolutely. So we've talked a lot about leadership. And before we move on, I think especially for a lot of our students here, just some some take-home points. And I think there's no one better really to address those than Dina, because she's the closest out of all of us from just graduating from school. And mashallah, with your leadership positions that you had. So why don't you tell us, what did you do to achieve leadership positions, no matter what scale it was? What kind of qualities, let's say someone wants to be a captain at school, school captain, sports captain, whatever it is, what kind of qualities do schools look for in leaders?
Yeah, well, I think I was lucky with my school because the leaders they were looking for were people who are true to themselves. Like you just think about any leader you have. You can't be a people's pleaser, because I think if you're going to be leading like a whole, I guess your peers, or even like in a bigger scale, a nation or whatever, you can't be a people's pleaser because you just lose yourself in that process. And what, like, your whole point of being a leader is for you to help those around you. But if you spend your whole time trying to be like the people around you, it's just, you lose yourself. And in the process of losing yourself, I guess what you have to offer, that also decreases because, hey, even if you do get that popularity, are you really fit to be a leader? Because, like, yes, everyone's a leader, but the person who's actually on there making the decisions, that's the person who gets there just by being themselves. And I guess if you use, Allah as your guide, as your values, because I know there came a time where I just tried to be like everyone else. But the reality is what made me a leader wasn't being like everybody else. Well, the things that people respected in me were the values I tried to develop, to caring about what Allah thinks rather than what my peer thinks, Like the value, to be popular, I guess, gossiping, like that's usually a good way to get up there, you have the latest news, latest heat. But that's not what the people wanted, despite that's what they did, but that's not what the people wanted. They wanted a person who was honest and truthful. And so I guess what the people are isn't necessarily what they want. And I just took it upon myself to use the Islamic teachings, to be honest, just to be helpful. And that's the thing that attracted everyone. It's something special and rare, I guess, just being true to yourself, that attracts the people around you.
Very true. And that it's similar to what Muhammad was saying about finding stability within yourself. So both of you are really echoing the same sentiments here. It's very easy to get caught up in the latest trends, keeping up with the TikTok, trying to be the funny person. But that will only get you so far. It might help you when you're in grade 6. It might help you when you're in grade 9, grade 10. As you get higher up in school, teachers start to look at you differently. Like Fahim was saying, when you get halfway to that manager level, people start to look at you differently. Do they have the qualities to be a leader? And so we can be leaders, in everything, but especially the older that you get, and especially the stage that a lot of you students are at now. Maybe it's time to take a step back and think and find that stability, find out who you are as a person, and then someone that everyone else will gravitate to as well.
I just want to say that was a beautiful quote, and it needs to be that what Dina said. What the people want, what the people are is not necessarily what they want. That's a gem.
Someone needs to be taking notes here of all the quotes that we've got.
Yeah, no, that's a good quote. I got to keep that to heart. Yeah, I think Fahim wanted to say something as well.
Hamza, I was just going to say, thanks, Sarah. Just on the leadership thing, I think it's linked to what Zahir was saying earlier. When he said the type of leadership we care about is if your intention is about the ummah. So if you take the Islam side out of it for a second, in the school context, what you look for in school leaders is people who care about something other than themselves, right? That's the crux of it, right? So you have to care about something other than yourself if you want to go for a school thing. Now, whether that be, I've had friends who got up and got the votes because they were entertaining and funny, and they wanted to entertain. And again, they weren't doing it for themselves. They wanted to entertain the crowd, so they got leadership. I got people who were serious and smart and cared about the environment and things like that. Again, they got up because it was something serious, right? So there's different ways to care about something other than yourself. And I think that will put you in good stead. I do want to just mention one thing with school leadership, and I talk about this to anytime I speak to anyone in school. Have you guys heard of Khan Academy? a Muslim guy, Salman Khan, an ex-hedge fund manager. He ended up creating an online learning platform for kids in school. And any topic, there's a 10-minute video on, and you can read it, and it's really, really great. Anyway, he did something which was really, really cool. He does a TED Talk with Bill Gates on YouTube, I think. And he explained that his model is you get 10 questions right, you move on to the next set of learnings, right? So you don't move on until you get 10 questions on a particular topic right. And he found that there's some smart kids who get 10 questions right very, very quickly, and they move up to level 5, level 6 very quickly because they just naturally so smart, get the 10 questions right. And then he found there's this huge group of kids who don't get 10 questions right. They keep getting stuck on question 8 on a particular topic. And once the teacher sits down and explains that topic to them, you find that they end up overtaking the kids after level 7 or 8. So while they were behind, they were stuck on level 2 while these kids were flying to level 6, level 7. What these kids were doing was they had the effort, they had the hard work, they had that point you were making, Hamza and Mohammed, about discovering themselves. They knew what they were about and their character, but they were just struggling with this particular topic. And the question was, once it was explained to them, they didn't lose any of their other work ethic, and they just passed without fail. And he's got tons of data on this, right? There's every school, without fail, he says so, that there's always a talented group that go through quickly, and then they stagnate. Not all of them, but a lot of them stagnate. And then there's this group that get behind initially, but they pass them. And the reason I wanted to point this out, obviously, is school leadership. Mashallah, if you get it, alhamdulillah. But if you don't get it, I don't want you to ever feel that that means something in the context of you are not leadership material, or your future is you're not a future leader, or anything like that, right? The school is basically creating an environment for you to discover things, try things, learn how to make friends, learn how to be in a group of 35 people every day in a classroom, and how to get along and things like that. And alhamdulillah, a few people have shown signs at this point that they're ready for a slightly higher level of leadership, and the school has entrusted those people to learn those skills now. Okay, that doesn't mean if you didn't get that position that you won't have a turn to at some point in life to become a leader. We all are leaders, as we were saying earlier. So please don't get discouraged. Ideally, you still care about something other than yourself. So if that's the case, you would help whoever's got the leadership position and be a supporter and take that opportunity. And there's nothing stopping you in life from getting further leadership positions and things like that. It's an ongoing journey. It never stops. It just keeps going, okay?
Absolutely. I'm just reading through the chat here. I've got a question from Aya. Should we strive for certain careers over others? Are there certain careers that we have a greater capacity to enact change? If yes, which ones are they? And if not, then how do we enact change and be a force for positive change in whatever career we do? So how about I direct this one at Mohammed first?
Yeah, well, so yeah, I think you know, the standard end to that question is, if you're not a doctor or a lawyer, you're out of your mind. And I think that is, you know, obviously a very rudimentary statement. Obviously, it seems so easy to be able to say, oh yes, healthcare is great because you're able to help people Islamically, that's good. But I think what we're really forgetting here is how to maximize your own strength. You know, whatever your strengths are. If you're really good in IT, hit IT hard. If you're really good, you know, in writing field, hit journalism, hit being a lawyer, whatever it is that you really like and you really value, go towards that. Because number one, it'll give you more happiness and like prosperity within that field that you're in. You're passionate about it, you're good at it, you're going to do something great in the field. And number two, it's going to give you more time away from the field as well. And I think it's important to realize that as great as careers are, they aren't your whole life. You know, after 5 o'clock, you come home and you want to aim for, you know, as early as possible before 5 to come home. I do that on uni as well. because life also exists outside of careers. So as for the career side of things, I would say it's that generic advice of do what you are passionate about and what you're good at, and Islam will find its way into it. I'm quite envious for him here, having to have 600 people who are in direct contact with him, and him being in a management position is a blessing and a curse, because he has to Islamically live up to all those standards. Like he is an exemplar for Islam in that position. Like that, for a lot of those people, that's going to be one of their only or main interaction with Islam. And it's the same for us in whatever career we're in. So if we're good at our career, then that shows that we can really be ambassadors for Islam there. We can be happy in our lives, and we can have time for stuff outside of our career, which is where we can do Islamic stuff and, just chill out and have time as well. That's my answer for that.
I'm going to chime in on this one. Sorry, I've got a bugbear on this one.
All right,
Dad's a doctor. My dad's a doctor and I'm not a doctor. So listen up, kids. Nothing against the 3 doctors on the panel. I love you all and thanks for keeping us safe in COVID and all that. Okay, I've got my vaccines. No, really important. Okay, I've grown up in Bangladesh. I've lived in Bangladesh. I've grown up in South Africa. I was born in Bangladesh, grew up in South Africa, moved to Australia. What you'll find in developing countries, and not even developing, in any countries, what parents want, and probably what humans want, is a sense of security from a financial and life perspective, right? So you don't have to worry about, will I have a job or not? You still want a job, irrespective of what you need, a basic job to live for your family and pay the bills and things like that. What you'll find, I don't know about you guys, if you have parents who are first generation migrants, with the utmost respect, they want the absolute best for you. And in their head, what is best for you with what they've grown up with is going to be medicine, law, engineering. And if you're lucky, chartered accounting might make the line, okay? That's probably where it stops, simply because that's what it is in countries that like Bangladesh, South Africa, India, Pakistan, any of the Middle Eastern countries, I imagine. And even in Australia, to be honest, those are probably pretty safe career bets, okay? So, mashallah, please strive for that. The issue that happens when we do that, though, is if we're now thinking for the ummah, okay, like we were saying as a theme, there's a missed opportunity for us in other domains of society if all our talented people are becoming those 4 things only, okay? Now, I'm not saying that's not risky, because a career in, I don't know, consulting or something else is more risky. There's no doubt about that, okay? But we have such talented people that risk can be offset, and the opportunity for the ummah is huge if we've got, so perfect example, how, not that it's a goal or it should be, but imagine if the CEO of Telstra was Muslim, okay? For us, that's probably not a difficult thing to imagine, but there's so many Muslims, so many people in Australia who are not Muslim, who will just like spit their coffee out in shock at the concept of the CEO of Telstra one day being Muslim. I'm not saying we all have to go out to becoming the CEO of Telstra, but why is that? Why is that not even a possibility in people's minds? It's because they don't see us as being CEOs and things like that, and that's fine. But then if we don't have a plan to one day, inshallah, do that, would that benefit the ummah? My position is it would. Okay, my personal position would be really great if of the 200 big companies in Australia, the ASX listed 200 companies, 1 or 2 of those CEOs were Muslim. I think that would help us a lot from a political messaging, from the media messaging, from all of the things that then trickle down to someone in a shopping mall being abused for being Muslim. Imagine if the CEO of Westfield was Muslim. Like, then what do you think would happen if someone in a Westfield then ran up to a sister wearing hijab and pulled her hijab in a Westfield if the CEO of Westfield was Muslim? What do you think would realistically happen? Okay, so those sorts of things, I'm just a bit mindful that I don't want you ever to disrespect your parents into thinking that all brown parents just want us to study medicine. That's not the case. All your parents want, and my parents are the same, they want the best for us and they want us to have a secure life and to the knowledge that they have based on the knowledge they have. But if you can respectfully get to a position where some of you, I'm not saying all of you, but if some of the talented people, I would love for some of the talented people to spread a bit more into corporate Australia. That would be really, really good.
Historically as well, just to chime in on what you said, historically as well, when Islam went to different places like Malaysia and Indonesia, the Maldives, and China as well, it was the economic clout of the Arab traders who came that actually leaned a lot of people towards Islam. And the thing with medicine and law and accounting is that's a service industry, and so you are serving the other person. You're not in a position as much as power to influence things as much. So definitely agree with that. And as you said as well, the point is the first generation that comes, I think it's safe that you have, it's almost like a work in progress. Like it's safe that when the first generation comes in, that generally majority of people will go over those safe jobs because that's what their parents pushed them into. And I think that's going to be the case for the majority. So you have a very good stable base for that second generation that's come in. But now the point is for anybody else and for everyone here, if they're going into that, to think for your children in that generation. I'm very hopeful because if you have people who are well educated, generally financially stable, then in the next generation, those people will be able to take risks with a lot less risk, because obviously people from majority populations, they have generations here, they have properties here, they have a whole bunch of wealth that they can fall back on if they mess up, and so they're able to really take a lot of risks without much much of an actual risk, because they can always come back to this uncle that they have or their father or this. But in our circumstance, sometimes that's not the case for everyone, right? So it's like you got this one shot, so play it safe. And I think that definitely, if you're not going to do it in this generation, the second generation for your kid, really push them, especially into business and these sorts of things, because in this society, money is the power, money talks, and you can't make you can make good money in service industries, but you can't make a lot. That comes in owning businesses, that comes in being an entrepreneur, that comes in becoming CEOs and these sorts of things. That's where you make major, and then you're able to spread that and these sorts of things. The challenge, I will say, with that, and this is something for everyone to keep in the back of their mind, is that the economic system obviously is a system here that's based on riba, based on interest. And this is a huge challenge in terms of being able to make a lot, like it puts you at a disadvantage in terms of being able to make lots and lots and lots of money. Now, there are more options coming out: Islamic finances, Islamic mortgages, Islamic systems even of insurance and these sorts of things that are coming out in Malaysia, different models there, Sharia compliant banking, Islamic banks and these sorts of things. They're starting to pop up here and there around the world, and they'll take a few years or so, maybe a decade or not, before they come to Australia and whatnot. But that's something to always keep in mind, is to keep that idea conscious. Go to a scholar that you trust. There's going to be some concessions with regards to the law, because it's the beautiful thing about Islamic law, that there are always flexibility in the law, but always keep the law in mind, because if we just dispense of it and just say, whatever, I'm just going to play into this, then that's going to be problematic, and then there'll be no barakah in our risk. But at least keep that in mind. Go to someone you trust, someone who's specialized in those fields. And there's a lot of different Islamic finance consultancy firms, actually, and Islamic finance people that you can consult and ask them about this and whatnot to make sure everything's good. But yeah, I think that's where the community needs to go, outside of the service industry, more into that entrepreneur, innovative type of thing. And within the service industry as well, I would say, if you are going into research, going into academia, going into these types of things as well, because then you get power within that field, right? Within the medical field, within these sorts of things. So that's a place that you go and really apply yourself, rather than just settling for that. But if you want to just live a comfortable life and enjoy and raise a family, then at least have that in your mind for your children.
Can I also just add one more thing, just one tiny thing? One of my mentors is alhamdulillah, is probably one of the most successful Muslims in the corporate sector. His name is Talal Yassin. He runs Crescent Wealth Superannuation Fund, if you know that one. But he was very successful in corporate Australia before he moved across. He has the saying that if we all did a little bit together and we worked together as Muslims, we could achieve a lot more. And that's probably the other thing to just keep in mind in the next generation and this current generation that we can do. There's no excuse for this one. Is if we can just network a bit better than probably our parents' generations did. You have to keep in mind, our parents' generation struggled with coming to a new country, settling in society. So their networking was a social networking. They needed that social bonding to feel like they have friends and belonging. Most of us, alhamdulillah, have friends that are outside of the Muslim community and the societies that we already live in. So we kind of feel like we belong in Australia or in the societies that we commit in. So I think we have an opportunity to network a little bit better, more from a strategy, like we're doing tonight, this afternoon, to have these sorts of meetings and these sorts of discussions about our future as a community and as a society. And the more of you do that, even if it's groups of 4, groups of 5, the more of you do that, inshallah, you'll be more successful. All 4 of you will be more successful than if you each do your own thing. Okay? That's really important as well.
I do want to just apologize. I do have to go at 3, but Jazakumullah khairan. It's been really good being on this panel with everyone. I've learned a lot, alhamdulillah. Jazakumullah khairan to all my fellow panelists and all those who've been attending. I do apologize. I do have to leave a bit early today. But Jazakumullah khairan. Take care, everyone. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
That's absolutely okay. Jazakallah for coming and sharing your words of wisdom. Wa alaikum assalam. I guess just adding on to what Fahim said there, we know the hadith about how the Muslim Ummah is like one body, and when one part of it feels pain, the rest of it does as well. We can apply that to more than just helping out oppressed brothers and sisters in Palestine or in Australia, whatever it may be. And yeah, it's actually acting like one body. And what other group is there that, that are linked so closely together, like Muslims, where you've got thousands of us, and if you're doing a fundraiser, your Muslim brother at this random place and you've never met him before is doing a fundraiser, you're there, you're ready to help out. You could be passing through that town and you're like, yeah, I'll stop by. So that bond, I think that's a really good point, that we should start utilizing that more. Once again, reading through the chat, I can see Umar's got a question here. How do we make sure that Islam remains a priority in stressful times such as exams? So usually when we're making a to-do list, Islamic activities like going to the madrasa, they end up at the bottom of the list. That is true. How do we change that? Dina, do you want to share some thoughts on that? What did you do when you were making your to-do list for final exams in school, and you also had to read your Quran every day or go to the madrasa on Saturday or Sunday, whatever day it was?
Yeah, definitely. So it was also a little hard for me, but personally, because I was in such stressful situations, with external exams and everything, I knew that the one person who could get me through this was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because honestly, your hard work can get you so far, but like, how can you get barakah in something that you're not investing, religious effort to? And I think because of that faith, I remember before my ATAR came out, I read through the whole Quran, because I was like, there's only so much my hard work could do. I had to I needed to invest in my religion, the person who can give me anything, because nothing can happen without Allah's will, despite how much I do. So for me, it was important. I was asking of Allah something so big, but nothing so big for Him. And the only way I could see that I could get barakah in it was to indeed invest time and remember Allah, because only Allah could get me through those, I guess, stressful exam times that you are talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess I can't remember who told me this, but a while ago, if you want success in anything, whether it's an exam or a position, there's really 2 parts to it. And one of those is putting your own effort in. But that's not enough by itself. Just like you were saying, to unlock the barakah or the success within that, you also need Allah's support. And one way of doing that is to make dua. Another one is to read the entire Quran before your ATAR comes out. MashaAllah, that's very impressive.
Hamza, a friend of mine who's a scholar once taught me that it stuck with me for a long time, that ibadah is doing the right thing at the right time. So we all know reading the Quran's good, but during an exam, we obviously can't be sitting there reading a Quran, right? Like in the exam room itself, we have to be writing the exam questions, right? So that question that the question was worded as, how do we make sure Islamic stuff remains a priority? I think balance is important. So obviously don't skip any of your farad acts, but with the right intention, everything else can also be a form of ibadah, right? So, so that's really important to note. So don't think that if you are doing, I don't know, let's say this call today, if we see this as a form of ibadah, right? If we see it with the intention is we've got a group of 20 or so talented young Muslim people who are giving up their Saturday afternoons to listen to a random person they've never heard of talk on Zoom about about leadership, right? If you see that as an act of ibadah, now it can trade off, like it can trade. It's not a waste. So just because you didn't go to madrasa now and you're on this call doesn't mean you've wasted this call from an Islamic perspective, right? So just we sometimes, unfortunately, we stick to very traditional or very standard definition of what is ibadah, and we kind of ignore the ibadah side of what we're doing in our day-to-day lives as well, and how we can make it incorporated daily.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll just jump in on that. Like, yeah, I completely agree, because your actual studying, you can turn that into something religious, like your faith in Allah, and that can just bring you closer. The fact that you need Allah to get you through that. You don't necessarily have to be going to madrasa to read, I guess, in your exam period, to learn about the stories of the prophets at that time. But you can still work on it whilst you're studying, you know, making the dua for studying, you know, Rabbi shrah li sadri yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Just du'as like that, you can incorporate them to what I guess is not regularly considered something religious, but you can make that religious.
Yeah, so trying and combining the both, whether it's explicit acts of ibadah, like what you're saying, reading the Quran and making dua in every spare moment that you've got, but also implicit, like what Fahim was talking about. And that's something that I've tried to do when the reason that I wanted to do medicine, and I think a lot of us that are doctors or becoming doctors, is to want to help people. So every exam that I study for, every test that I do, every assignment, before I submit it or while I'm doing it, I just try and think, why did I want to do med in the first place? It was to help people, and inshallah help, you know, Allah's people and become a good force for the ummah. So every exam, every mark, inshallah, those are good deeds as well. Any of our other students have any questions? I'm just gonna, I don't like it when people do this to me, but call out names.
Can I just ask one thing here? When we are talking about this, like making priorities, I think the question which was there is sometime for him is okay that whatever we do, if with a good intention, is a form of ibadah, but sometimes it's from the parents, because I also know that we give more importance when it comes to the school exams, school tests, like going to school every day. Every parent will wake up their child and send them to school because they think it is important. But when it comes to the religious knowledge, when it comes to sending them to madrasa, or this panel, probably this is also a form of madrasa. It's not just not going to masjid, but we are learning here about Islam. So when this kind of situation comes, then it is not in our priorities, because we say, okay, this we can do later, but that going to that event or going to finishing that assignment is more important. So I want to know that how we can bring the importance of religious study, because that will eventually help us. When we were talking about that our character building and all those what we want our children to have, we have to learn that from somewhere. And if all the time 24/7 we are worried about our studies, then how we can get the time to learn other things, or how we can bring it like in our priorities?
I'll just take this one. I'm probably the only other parent on this call, Auntie. The main one, I think this again comes from parents wanting the best for their kids and parents fearing that their children will fall behind, right? So I think the first things, like, I don't think we should make any parents feel bad that they are bad parents for wanting this. I don't get that. So otherwise we won't get them on side. Like, we're trying to encourage them to come along this journey. If we start off by saying you're doing a bad thing, they're going to tune out, right? So I think we have to be welcoming of these parents, and we have to try and understand what is driving their behavior. And what is driving their behavior is they don't want their children to not have an income when they're dead, and they want their children not to be poor, and they want them to have a house and a job and things like, and a family. That's the first one, right? Second one then is it's a matter of deen and a matter of faith and the strength of your deen and prioritization. I personally think that it's probably a two-way thing. There's a personal thing that people have to get more educated and understand it and realize that, hey, this is a priority. But the second one, I think, is we probably have to reinvent how we teach the traditional things and make it a bit more practical. Like we kind of, like, rather than just say, go there and learn the Quran, let's go, hey, if you come here and learn the Quran, we're going to teach you these 3 attributes today in the hadith that will make you more successful. Just in general, not just dunya, in akhirah, everything. You'll be more prominent. You kind of link the two together a little bit more. This is the problem with university studies at the moment. Same thing in universities are having to reinvent themselves as do this degree so that you'll learn the skills that you need to then do that job. Okay. Aside in medicine, that's happening okay. But in our world, the graduates that come in, we just, as employers, we assume they know nothing, right? Like that's basically how practical university is. Like we know that they have the capability to study, but universities are having to reinvent themselves. So I think it's a little bit two ways. Like those who are teaching have to reinvent what they're teaching a little bit and bring the more practical side of the thing being taught as well. So focus on those things about character, leadership, and things like that, and highlight those in the messaging and make it fun. I think that's the other thing. Like, it's not fun. Like, okay, like it's made to feel like a chore, and make it enjoyable, make it okay. Like, we seem to have fallen into this trap that we are not allowed to have fun and enjoy learning about our religion and make it an enjoyable experience. And I think there's a little bit more that we can do in that side as well.
One thing I'm going to add to that is doing good deeds or Islamic acts in exam time also doesn't have to be massive things. If you usually read, mashallah, half a juz or 1 juz a day, a week, whatever it is, it's natural that, you know, it's not static, your priorities in life, and even day to day. So during exam time, you might be studying a couple of hours extra a day, so you might have a little bit less time. That doesn't mean that you have to stop everything else and just drop it. Like Fahim said, obviously you've got your fard that you have to do. You've still got to pray 5 times a day, but instead of reading the same amount of Quran, you might read half of it. If you think that there's absolutely no time, which we can talk about later, time management, even just reading 1 ayah. And we know that the most beloved deeds to Allah are the ones that are small but consistent. So if you make it a priority and you force yourself, and it's going to be difficult at the start, it's very easy to just let things fall to the side. You're used to watching lectures when you're with your parents at home, and when you move out to uni, that's an active decision. You've got to say, I'm going to turn the PlayStation off and I'm going to listen to a Naman Ali Khan lecture because I know that's good for me. So one point is that at the start, you might have to force yourself, but make it a habit. I was just cooking earlier with my wife, and, you know, for half of it, we were just chatting about our day, you know, scheduling, what are we going to do, what work is left. And the other half, I was like, you know, let's just put on a Naman Ali Khan lecture. I haven't listened to one of those in a while, and I miss that. And so time that otherwise wouldn't have been spent maybe doing something productive. Cooking is a necessity, but we hopefully turn that into an act of worship. And the second thing is, it doesn't have to be big. You don't have to watch hour-long lectures. It was a 10-minute video. And inshallah, we can now incorporate that into whatever we're doing. Moving on, got a question here. How do you cope with peer pressure? And sometimes it does feel like you are the only one that is going through all of this. So Dina, do you want to give us some insight into that? How do you resist the pressure of trying to fit in, or if everyone is doing the same thing?
Yeah, definitely. Of course, I guess a lot of you would be feeling that with the parties that go on, you can't go to a lot of the stuff your friends seem to be doing, drinks and all that. The way I handled that is like, you keep having to remind yourself why you are doing this. You know, why am I not going out to the party? Is it because my mum told me I can't go? Or is it because I believe that actually, you know, there's a reason Allah made it haram? And then the next part is, why does Allah make it haram? So the best way to resist peer pressure is not making decisions because somebody else told you to do something. It's because you personally, you believe in that thing. You convince yourself to do that thing. So now it's your value that's stopping you from succumbing to peer pressure, rather than, oh, my mum said this, so now I'm just going to have to try to stop doing this.
Anybody else want to chime in? I guess it comes back to that stability that we were talking about. Don't do things because people want it. Give them what they need.
Yeah. Can I add one more thing though? Peer pressure goes the other way. So if you speak to convert Muslims or African Muslims, they'll feel that they are not included in our masjids, in our traditionally more South Asian, Middle Eastern Muslim groups. They feel ostracized, they feel excluded. So everything we're talking about that happens to us, we kind of do to our own. So it's just very important to be aware of that. I'm also very mindful of, there's a question there about, I saw one about how do you find people who are righteous, a group of righteous people? The truth is we don't know who's righteous, okay? You can't, nobody walks around with a definitive tag that they're righteous people, right? So the moment you start labeling and you start going, oh, I'm part of this righteous group, and Hamza, because you went to that party last night, you are no longer welcome to this righteous group, we're probably doing a lot of harm, right? No one person's going to be perfect. No one person's going to tick all of your boxes. If you've got 10 standards, okay, my question to you is going to be, what if there's someone who does 9 bad things that you consider bad, but today they woke up and decided they want to do the 10th good thing that's on your list? Would you include them in your group, or would you prefer that they're not part of your group? Because that's really important on your side of peer pressure. Okay, and in the adult space, this is happening. And sorry, I'm not saying that you're not adults, but I'm saying like the people who are basically sitting at home, not in school, not in uni, or not at work, and online on Facebook Warrior Land and things like that. There's this thing that's becoming really prominent in the Muslim community called religious shaming. So basically, oh, Hamza, you don't pray, you're not good enough to be with us, kind of thing, right? And the reason I say that's a bad thing is those who kind of hate Muslims, and there are a few people who do hate Muslims, they don't care whether Hamza prays or not. They just care that Hamza's Muslim, so they're gonna discriminate Hamza equally to me. Okay, they're not judging that. So at least we need to make in this situation, if Hamza wasn't praying and I am, if I don't make Hamza feel like he and I are at least on the same team as Muslims, then Hamza's got 2 people attacking him. He's got the Islamophobes attacking him, and he's got me attacking him. That's not helping Hamza, right? That's not helping us as a community. So I'd really encourage you, just overlook the faults of others in your group. Like, don't obviously allow yourself to be influenced by those faults if you don't agree with them yourself. But make sure you create welcoming environments that no matter who, even the biggest of sinners publicly, feel like they're welcome in your group. Okay, please don't exclude them, because it's those people who actually end up struggling the most, because you have a group of friends, the Islamophobes have a group of friends, and there's this group that are they don't feel like they belong in either, right? And it's really important.
Yep. Just to circle back, sorry for to take away from your point, back to peer pressure and finding a group of like righteous people. One other tip I find is that you find out what the locations are like just be aware which places or locations or like settings are putting you in those positions of being peer pressured as well. And aiming to avoid those, settings. So if it's, at a certain, part of the school where like your friends all go to hang out, maybe hang out with them in other parts of the school, where they're in a better setting, they're more comfortable and not as unreligious or like not as openly peer pressuring you. And the other side to that is like the whole how to find good-hearted people. I think one of the earlier questions as well was how do you find people who are good influences? I can't find any. I think that's something like that was the question. It's, well, you don't look at it so holistically. They don't have to be this angel that you just latch on to. Very great if they're there and follow them heaps. But if they're not there, find people who, when they're doing a certain thing or at a certain moment, are just good people. Usually in class, there's just one person who studies heaps in class and actually pays attention. Try sit next to them. In lunchtime, if there's someone who's just, that sweaty kid who just runs down and hits the ball all day, go join them and play ball. And when you're busy in those moments, when you have someone there with you who's doing something that you find acceptable, you're comfortable with, then you won't feel peer pressured because you're doing something. And you're not in a state where, or you're not in a location where, kids want to peer pressure you. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to finding, I guess, a good group of people to be around. I think the way I approach that is kind of, it keeps going back to this, but just being myself. And once I implement my values, when I'm not gossiping, when I'm not, I guess, with the latest, whatever the latest news is, who still wants to be around me? So who still finds me interesting when I'm just trying to be a good Muslim? And for me, I found that my best friend, JSE, she was often a person that would make me go, alhamdulillah. She wasn't Muslim, but she respected all of my beliefs and the values that I find in Islam. I found that she reflected despite not being a Muslim. And for me, yes, she was a Muslim, but she was, like you guys said, she was a good person. And inshallah, like, I can make dua for her hidayah, but it's really about trying to be a good Muslim yourself, making a dua, and then seeing who's around you after all that.
And look, you might be going through school, and as I'm assuming was the case when I was going through school, you don't have that many Muslim friends around you. And like one point, Dina has said that there are other people who exist besides Muslims, and they are good people too. And it's okay to be friends with them, and it's okay to hang out with them and take the good things away from them. But also, you'll get there eventually. You might not have someone in grade 10 or grade 11. Someone might join your school, a good Muslim friend or a good friend in grade 12. When you go to university, it's completely different. I went from Witsunday Anglican School, had a couple of hundred kids, to Monash University, who they've got 60,000 people that go there. And whether it was in my medical class or whether it was in the Islamic Society or I played basketball, you've just got so many more opportunities to meet, the right people. And so don't feel like just because right now there isn't that person that you feel like comfortable, or, no one is an angel, but it's very easy to feel like we need that person or that group of people to be better or to be better Muslims. You will find them eventually, and it's going to be difficult until you get there. It's just how you manage that difficulty in year 10, year 11, year 12, until you finally get to that other side. And then it gets so much easier. Trust me. Then you'll find that group of people. You'll want to do the right things. You'll hang out. You'll go get a HSP instead of going to a party. And, you'll go and play sports and you'll feel fulfilled. So it gets easier. Trust me.
Yeah. The other thing is you'll find people where the activities are. So if there's a fundraiser happening, go attend the fundraiser on the volunteer side. The people volunteering would probably be those sorts of people you're looking for. If there's activities, get involved is probably the other way. I'm going to steal from popular culture again. Emma Watson, who plays Hermione in Harry Potter, she was recently asked whether she's in a relationship or she's single. And she said she's not single, she's self-partnered. So she's basically looking after herself, right? And that's really important. I think that's really, really important. Like, so as Hamza was saying, if you're going through a difficult time in terms from a loneliness perspective, like that's okay. You'll get through it, and you don't think that that'll be a permanent state, I guess. I mean, get help, talk to people and get help if you need help in that sense. but don't feel like that'll be forever, because it won't be.
Yeah, definitely. Because I also agree with that, especially when I reached year 12 and parties became a huge thing. And literally every other student went to parties. It felt like, oh, what do I do now on my graduation night? So obviously, I guess those periods could seem a little lonely. But then I go to university and literally now, alhamdulillah, I did find a group of Muslim girls. And every time I want to go to the prayer room, there's always somebody I know there. And now it's my friends who are leading me to these Islamic events. And I think it's just a matter of time, and inshallah it will get easier. Just because right now it seems that you're a little lonely, inshallah there are opportunities coming, and it's just a matter of waiting and patience. And patience is a huge thing in Islam.
Does anyone else from the audience have any questions? Some people I recognize. Shahir. Who do we have? Omar, you've asked a question. Sana. Any questions from the floor?
There's a question in the chat room, Hamza, on how to call Muslims.
From Zayan. How do we call non-Muslim friends to Islam, especially when they ask us difficult questions about terrorism? Okay. Fahim, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I'll kick us off. How you give dawah, if we learn from our friends who sell things, when you're selling something to someone, you have to tailor your message for the audience. Okay, otherwise they're not going to buy. Okay, and for some people, cheap price will get them to buy it. So you give them the concept, oh, it's 50% off today, brother, or 50% off today, sister, buy it today. It's a special price for you, they'll buy. For some people, it's the quality of the product that they'll buy. It's like, oh, this is the best thing that's ever made. Nowhere else other than Australia, this thing exists. It's the best version, you'll have the best quality product, and they'll buy. So dawah, if we take the lesson from sales, and we look at the country we're in, which is Australia, which is increasingly becoming non-religious, if you look at the census data and things like that, I'm of the view that the likelihood of direct sales of please become a Muslim, you should become a Muslim, it's the true path, and you are misguided by going to parties, is not going to work, okay, to our customers. The better approach is going to be what we've been talking about, and what Zahira was talking about when we're talking about leadership, is be such a great person and role model that you inspire others to want to get your attributes. And it's that subtle, get that invitation to that dawah, right? Technically, like, so unsolicited approaches to telling me, like, if anyone comes to me and say, hey brother, you should be praying 5 times a day, even I'm now at the point where I'm like, dude, come on. Like, I don't need you to tell me I should be praying 5 times a day. Even if they always argue that, oh, I'm just reminding you and I'm being a Muslim brother, I care for you and stuff. It just doesn't work in the society that we live in now. Okay, the way our brains are wired, it's jarring. No one else does that. No other aspect of our lives where someone is trying to convince us to do something, do they do that to us. Okay, so I would suggest that we don't go down the direct route from a dawah perspective. So I would suggest that in inviting people to Islam, I think we just set really good standards, follow the sunnah, do all those things. And when I say follow the sunnah, I don't mean pray the extra 2 rakats. I'm talking about follow the sunnah side of moving that branch from the pathway, go to Clean Up Australia Day and be seen doing those sorts of civil services to society, be seen as contributors to society. That will be far more powerful a form of dawah in Australia than anything else.
That was perfect, Fahim. And just to add to the second aspect of that question, so when you yourself are then, sometimes you're approached by someone directly, and they'll go on an offensive question and be like, how could this have happened in your Islamic history, or Islam says this, how can you as a person accept that? And that'll happen in school, that'll happen in uni. That's just life now. And I think that there's there's a time when we could have been like, you know, ignorant to it all. But I think, unfortunately, increasingly, we're going to have to go to younger and younger years to get, you know, kids to know how to, and you guys all, to know how to respond to these types of questions. And there's two ways. You know, you're not going to know the answer to everything. You're not going to have this pitch perfect answer. And especially if the person who's asking it just wants to attack. And has no genuine curiosity at all. And you'll find that a lot is like, you'll find that sometimes happens as well. They don't care at all about what you have to say. They just want to provoke a response. And so the key thing there is to realize that this person doesn't want to engage in a conversation. He just wants to attack. And, you know, either be like, look, I understand you're quite like, you know, upset about this issue that you're talking about. Can I get your number? Can I get your contact or email? And then I can get back to you with the details from one of my scholars who'll have a much, who'll have a coherent answer for this. Or just find some way to diffuse and deflect and get out of that situation. Obviously acknowledging that, you know, like you want to try contact them back if they are. Otherwise, if they are, you know, curious, don't try to take every question on yourself. Be like, look, I'll get back to you. What's your contact? I'll give you the message. And then also in your own time, try to learn some basic responses to some of the key questions you will get asked. And if you go into uni, it usually does happen. You do get asked, like, even the simple stuff, oh, why don't you eat pork? Or why don't you drink alcohol? All the way to the more serious stuff, which comes off like, what is, you know, all these terrorist attacks, the Palestine issue, women's rights, all of this stuff comes out. And if you don't have some kind of at least safety answer of, look, I don't know, I'll get back to you, and hopefully we can create a conversation. Then you're going to feel much comfortable as if for anyone who approaches you with this kind of stuff.
My younger brother purposely keeps a low profile because he wants to avoid having to deal with those questions. And I'm sure there's lots of you in the audience, and there's lots in our community who know that inevitably the moment a Muslim becomes prominent in something or becomes seen in something, inevitably they're going to have to deal with more of those questions, right? So just a couple of things. Perfectly okay to not know the answer. In fact, that's quite powerful. That is the point we're trying to make, that not every Muslim knows everything, okay? And not every Muslim is a terrorist. So totally fine for you to say, look, I actually don't know that answer, okay? Okay, and that's fine, okay? Secondly, I was just going to say, to Mohammed's point, there's no point wasting your time on people who've made up their minds already, right? So anti-vaxxers, we don't even waste our time on trying to convince them. What we do is we go for the undecided, right? So those who haven't decided yet, and we make sure that we get to them before the anti-vaxxers get to them. Same logic. Islamic history has examples of that with, I think, Ibrahim alayhis salam and Namrud. Same thing, Namrud came up with crazy ideas, and Ibrahim alayhis salam just changed the topic and changed the topic and changed the topic to the point where basically he wasn't fighting on logic anymore with Namrud, because Namrud, he could realize very quickly that Namrud's made up his mind, right? So he wasn't going to convince him with logic. So there's sometimes you're just not going to convince people with logic. And then the ultimate get out clause out of all of this, right, is by definition, Islam is a religion of faith. Okay, so we'll never be able to, if it was definitive, there would be no element of faith there, right? So we would, no matter what you try to do, you are never going to convince an atheist or a non-Muslim like on a case of logic and reason, right? There will still be a small minutia of faith at some point, right? So don't try take on something that you don't have to. It's much better to say I don't know than give the wrong answer, by the way. And I think if you take away nothing from this chat today, that's probably the main one, right? So rather say I don't know.
I think that previously what was said is more important for those who are just in year 9 or 10 or 11 in these grades, that your character will tell them that what are Muslims, and how, and not only character like akhlaq and those qualities of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but also like how good you are in a study. You know, a person will never come and attack you if you are studying well, if you never lie, if you are totally honest, and if you always help others, your overall personality affects that the other person, how they will come with the question. So I will say that at this age, focus on those things. So probably they won't come and ask this question, at least not for attacking. If they are genuinely asking and you are still at not that stage to answer them, okay, you can come back with some decent answers, or from someone else who can reply them. But also that idea is also very good, which Muhammad said, that there are only like 10-20 questions which normally people ask. And if you are really into dawah, prepare some questions, the basic knowledge of those, and practice them. And if someone, sometime that question just pop up, you are able to give a small answer to just satisfy them, and then say that in detail, I will ask someone else, my knowledge is, I'm not still there. So, but basically the first thing is that your whole personality should be, as a Muslim, that strong that people won't ask that Muslims are terrorists. They will look at you and they cannot say that, because they admire your personality and they won't say this thing to you.
That's really good, Auntie. And I want to say this to Muslim kids. I don't know if you realize this. You speak to teachers in anywhere, okay? They'll tell you that their Muslim students are some of their best students. They're some of the most hardworking, inspirational. I know with Sunday Anglican School, the reputation that Muslim students have in that school is just phenomenal, okay? I was one of the first few waves of Muslim kids going through that school at that time. And it was, alhamdulillah, it was so great to see that Muslim school captains were coming out of that school. And in Brisbane, when I mentioned that there's a private school in Mackay that has Muslim school captains wearing a hijab, everyone just, like, they get baffled, right? But that's exactly the point that Auntie's making. Like, if you lead a great example, this becomes a non-issue. It's not an issue you will face, so which is brilliant.
All right, lots of great thoughts there, mashallah, and love to see the discussion as well. So I'm mindful that we've got about 20-ish minutes to go. Are there any, I'm reading through the chat, but if anyone else wants to pipe up from the audience, any questions? I see, Sana, you've said it can be a little overwhelming thinking about trying to be excellent and leadership, and you've got exams coming up or you're preparing for university interviews. Do you have any advice on maintaining your deen and mental health? That's a really good point. I'm getting a bit overwhelmed, actually. This is a lot to take in. So Dina, do you want to share something with us about how you managed to get through all of that?
Yeah, well, it was once again that idea of combining my deen with the target I had ahead. Like, the things that you've mentioned, they are stressful situations. And it's just going back to the thinking that you can't do any of this without Allah. And instead of thinking straight A's, you know, you should be thinking, like, work as hard as you can and then make dua Allah gives you what's best. Because you, like, I think there's a saying, like a verse, that you may like something but it's bad for you, and then you may hate something but it's good for you. And just adapting that mindset, you know, you try your best and then you make tawakkul and then leave it to Allah, and then that's where you find the peace. Like, in the remembrance of Allah you find peace. So when you've done all that you can, and then I guess you just leave the rest to Allah, and khalas, there's nothing you can do about it. That's, I think, the way I coped through any hardships that I found or any stressful situations. And that's how I maintained my deen, just by finding peace in those stressful situations through Allah.
I've kind of started, I remember, if you remember back an hour and a half ago, I kind of started with this point. Like, this is a lot to carry on your shoulders at your age. So the moment it's getting much, please drop this. This isn't you getting through okay and doing well, and your health and your well-being is far more important than having to worry about societal leadership, okay? That will come. Do as little or as much as you want to, but do not feel the pressure to have to do more of this, right? Okay? This is just do your job of studying and working hard and do whatever you do well. Islamically speaking, I don't know if it's a hadith or not, but there was that story about an elderly woman who donated 50 cents and she got rewarded more than someone who donated tons of money, because her 50 cents was all she could give, whereas the person who gave a ton of money still kept a ton of money for themselves in the donation, right? So Allah will look at the intention behind your effort and not the actual quantum, right? And even no matter what, sorry, that's my daughter coming in. Even if you were to do a ton of work, without Allah's help, that work is not going to be effective anyway. So you don't know which bits of work will have an impact and which bits of work won't have an impact. So just look after yourself at this stage, please. I think young people have so many challenges that unfortunately most of your parents are probably not even aware of what that challenge is, right? Like they're probably not aware of, like they can't contextualize that level of not challenge. It's a form of peer pressure, it's social media, it's however we engage with social media, it's the latest trend that you have to wear a certain clothing that way or something like that. Or, I mean, everyone has an iPhone now, and what if you don't have an iPhone? There's just so much pressure on at the moment, right? And if you start looking, yeah, that can overwhelm you really, really quickly. So please just look after yourself is probably all.
I like that. You don't have to do everything at once. You don't have to know all of the answers at the same time. And like I was saying earlier, if you, like Fahim was saying, if right now all you can do is take care of yourself, that's enough. If all you can do is study for your exams, that's enough. And then once you feel ready, start to do a little bit more. Whether we're talking from an Islamic point of view, sure, read some extra Quran. Whether we're talking from a leadership point of view, go help out. You don't have to sign up for a leadership position, but go help out with that one fundraiser. And it's not necessary to jump into things all at once. Build yourself up slowly, and you'll find out that the more you do, the more you realize that you're comfortable with. And so suddenly you'll be managing 600 people like Fahim, and you can come home to your daughter and just wind down. Whereas if I was to jump into that, I'd be thinking about it 24/7. I would be stressed out as well. So it takes a lot of time to get to that point. And so the fact that you're all here and willing to learn and to start this journey, mashallah, you're already ahead of most kids. You're absolutely. And like we said, we've already got a competitive advantage being Muslims, and you're young Muslim kids who are going through these issues, and you still took time out on your Saturday. Inshallah, that's something that Allah is going to reward and help you with.
Yeah, quality over quantity, people. That's it, right? So it's all about the quality of it.
And also, I just want to say, I think a lot of people, they see failure as the end of the world. Even if you do fail, that's okay. It's not something worth stressing, like keeping anxious about before anything actually happens. And even if you do fall, you can still get back up. Alhamdulillah, like a lot of us, we have our family to support us. Just because things don't go to our vision, once again, it's just that point of remember Allah's vision and the qadr of Allah. And when you accept that and when you trust His plan, just that makes your whole life a whole lot easier. There's no point in stressing about something that you can't do anything about.
All right, I reckon we'll go one last question. We don't have to go to time. I think we've discussed a lot of helpful things, inshallah. So let's go one final takeaway from each of our panelists. I know we've still got some questions that are unanswered, and I'm sorry that we couldn't get to them. If there's a panelist here I've got a question from iPad, whoever that is. As a Muslim who plays a lot of sport and is involved in extracurricular activities, how do you get rid of the stereotype that we are just people who strive to get straight A's and that's it? How do we show that there's more to Muslims and that we're everyday people? So we've talked a lot about this already. Mohammed, do you want to go one clincher sentence? How do you show people that you're just a good guy trying to do the right thing?
By not trying to show them and actually just being the guy or girl that you want to be. I think a lot of times when you're busy doing that hobby or that craft you really like, then you're busy in that, and everyone is then looking at you and seeing that that's who you are. And because you'll be doing it, because you'll be busy in it, you'll be good at it, and they're going to see that, they're going to value that, and they're going to talk about that. Hey, look, it's that girl, it's that guy. Oh, can you help me out with this? Or, oh my God, you should have seen this happen. You'll make stories and experiences and friendships around those things that you pick up besides academics, and then those will be who you're known as.
Thank you. Dina, what do you want to leave us with?
I agree with that. I guess all of this just comes back to just don't try to please other people. Don't try to prove your worth to other people. Just do what you think is right and stick to your values, and inshallah, everything will work out.
Inshallah. And Fahim?
I'm adamant about this. There has never been a better time to be a Muslim than now. Okay. Everyone else will say it's challenging, and it is. Don't get me wrong, there's challenges and stuff, but the spotlight's there. No publicity is bad publicity, right? Like, this is the opportunity. We have, alhamdulillah, majority of us have had parents who've made enormous sacrifices to come here and give us a platform to build on, right? So it's really exciting. It's an awesome, awesome time to build from scratch effectively. We are shaping up the future of Australia, alhamdulillah, with people like Dina, Mohammed, Hamza, and all of you who actually care about what that future looks like. I'm so optimistic that kids like these are going to have such a bright future, inshallah. And I'm so happy about that. And that's all we need. Like, if that's all we have to do till the day we die, inshallah, then alhamdulillah, that's great. That's a great life that we've led, alhamdulillah. We've set up Australia for Muslims to have a prominence, and not just Muslims, non-Muslims as well. We care about, and I think that's the trap that we sometimes fall into. Like, we just talk about Muslims as an insular thing. We're helping Australia grow and become an amazing country. We're contributing to that. Like, imagine the health system without the Muslim doctors, just for 2 seconds. Like, that's it, gone, it's collapsed, right? So we are contributing so much at the moment. And I'm so optimistic. I'm so excited about what lies ahead for us. I don't think that's a popular view. I don't think that's a common view. So if that's the takeaway today, I'd be really pleased that there's some crazy guy in Brisbane who thinks this is a great time to be Muslim. Okay, and he's very optimistic about it. It is, and you guys, it's all in your hands and all of our hands to work together and just move that one step forward.
It might not be the popular view, but it's a hopeful view, and inshallah one that we can all share and advance. So we'll end the session there. Thank you everyone, Jazakallah, for attending. Hopefully you gained something out of it, whether it was about studies or leadership or time management. Thanks again for sharing your Saturday with us. And until next time, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you.
I'm like